Okay, so welcome back if you have watched the last couple of reels that I've done recently, and thank you to the people who've just recently started to subscribe. It really means a lot. I really appreciate it. So today I was kind of deliberating over what to talk about because it's 2 years today since I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it's obviously something which is really personal to talk about, um, but I think is really relevant in terms of what I'm trying to achieve through this work, through the work of really kind of connection and female empowerment. And I think it's helpful for me to share something about my experience because there is so much that is isolating and disempowering around cancer and also around breast cancer, and how there can be so many kind of ideas or misconceptions about what people go through and how how people respond to us and all of that. And I kind of wanted to share some of my experience on it, how that's really kind of fed into my own journey, and the difference that it's made in terms of my ethos, my kind of outlook, what I'm really talking about when it comes to female empowerment. So I'm just going to get into it. So, like I said, 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I had a period of about a week and a half where I was really fearful that the diagnosis could have been terminal. So, when I received the news that I had a diagnosis, it was kind of framed to me in a way that was positive. So, it was saying, yes, it is cancer, but the prognosis is looking good. You will need surgery, etc., etc. So I think I kind of responded to that with a similar response in terms of what I've often done with challenge and adversity is to like just dive in and like basically armor up and say I'm going to get through this. I'm going to beat this thing and I'm going to show everyone. And I mean, at the time, I guess that worked. I mean, I did focus a lot on things like how I would maintain a balanced diet and also exercise, do all the things that would be important for me to have a foundation of well-being whilst going through this kind of health problem. Um, but it was a way of trying to control. And at the time, it felt like something positive, but it really was a way of me trying to control a situation that was, inevitably beyond my control. And it would show up in other ways, like I had to let people know that I would be off work for a period of about 6 weeks because I had the surgery. And I would tell people, like, people who are running the office where we worked, I'd say, oh, I'm going to be off for a few weeks because I've had a breast cancer diagnosis, because I didn't want to shy away from it. There's no reason for me not to be honest and open about it. I'm completely fine with that. But as soon as I said that, I would say, but it's totally fine because I'll be back soon and there'll hardly be any downtime, and I've caught it early, so it's already positive. And it did leave me feeling like in a position of having to manage other people's response or responses to my situation. It was my diagnosis. And yet I was trying to tell everybody, but like, this is just a blip. I'll be back to normal as soon as possible. And that is, that's clearly something that a lot of us struggle with through this challenge around showing up at work, showing up for people who rely on us, and demonstrating that we are kind of like warriors, that we deal with quite a lot of pain inevitably through being women, childbirth, everything, everything that goes with that. And so it's kind of it's socially acceptable for us to do that, but also there's something internal for us as well about having to kind of prove it to protect ourselves and be like, right, I'm just doing this, I'm moving forward, I'm going to try and take control of this situation. So it's not, for me, it was, this idea that people, you go through a like serious life-changing event like this, like being diagnosed with breast cancer at quite a young age as well. And a lot of people will think that will change your perspective on life, so you don't take anything for granted anymore and you are appreciative for every day. It doesn't quite work like that. I mean, for me, I certainly felt through my recovery that it was like a kind of wake up call to my purpose. Like, I've been through this. What is the point unless I can find purpose and meaning and I can help other people, this grand scale, this bigger scale that I can do right now. And so it set up this never ending target of trying to do something which was immeasurable. And I tried to approach it in terms of how I could do that through my work when I was running a non-profit for domestic abuse survivors in London. But I was also thinking about what I could do for myself professionally. So what I'm doing now as a female empowerment coach, I was trying to, well, I did start putting the foundations of that in before I left my job, but I couldn't give it my full attention. And I just kind of felt this constant need to try to fulfill this aim, which was undefinable. It was just this sense of like, I've got to kind of get somewhere where I have impact, and it was never enough. So there was something around the way that I was explaining I had breast cancer to other people was also caught up in this idea of when I was out of work for a while after having children. It was this is part of me. I'm a woman. This is an experience I'm having as a woman, having children, having breast cancer. But you're going to see how hard I work. You're going to see the results that I can create, the outcomes that I can achieve. You're going to see that because that's what I want you to see. That's what I'm projecting. It's this idea of the kind of warrior woman just doing everything and getting on with things. So I was caught in this trap of trying to fulfill my own perception of what success looked like. And, you know, it led to burnout for me. I mean, it wasn't just that, but it was certainly a kind of a factor in it that I was putting so much pressure on myself to deliver, to achieve, but without really being fair to myself about what that even looked like. It was just this constant state of kind of self-imposed inadequacy and frustration. And it wasn't healthy. It wasn't really being in touch with what I needed. Because whilst I was doing lots of exercise and eating well and showing everybody, look how healthy I am, look how well I'm doing, I was doing that, like I said, it was a way to control rather than a way to really take care of myself. So after I burnt out, that was a point where it was, what is this all for? What am I going through? And I saw a couple of things, even on social media, where it was a conversation about this lady was talking about her friend who had survived breast cancer and was telling her that she wanted to find her purpose and she was very frustrated. And I mean, obviously that kind of hit home for me a lot. But the response from her as the friend was, you just need to be. You just need to be here for your children, for your partner, for your friends, for your loved ones, for your community. You just need to be. We don't want anything more from you. And it makes sense. Like, that's exactly what I would say to a friend as well. I would say the same thing. I would say, don't put this pressure on yourself. You don't need to. I'm happy that you're here, and whatever you want to do, I will love and support you. And in fairness, that is what my family around me were saying. But it was very hard to hear it when you kind of feel such a pressure to achieve, to get somewhere. And that's also baked in with the way that we're raised as women. It's to do with how we try to maintain security and safety. So it does make sense. But there is something about stepping outside yourself and really looking at what's going on and getting a clearer picture as if you were your friend. And I've had that show up to me in all sorts of ways over time, which has really kind of changed my perspective, which is really relevant to what I'm talking about in terms of female empowerment. It's about being that friend for yourself in the way that you would for a real friend. So instead of, for me, doing lots of exercise and kind of really over exercising, it was more helpful to stop and think and make the decision. Is now a good time to exercise? Have I eaten anything? Am I quite tired? Have I got time? Not just, come on, let's just get this done. It's more of a punishment rather than a self-compassionate practice. And that takes a lot of muscle memory. And this is what I'm talking about around how really kind of building the muscle memory for sound, solid decisions is the basis for how you make progress. And if you're doing that from a place of authenticity, if you're being yourself, then you find a way towards your purpose because you can get clear about what you want and how you're going to get there. And that's, I think all of the things that I've been through in the last couple of years have been really, really tough. But that, doing the research in this area as well as working professionally in it for a long time, I know that I'm not alone, right? I know that I have demonstrated my skills, my ability, my courage, but it's very hard to see that for yourself and to encourage yourself when we're in a place of having to achieve, project, perfectionism, all these things. Like, I think I really want to draw attention to how challenging it is to effectively step outside of that way of thinking. But it really comes down to a sort of sense of reframing. So I firmly believe that female empowerment is tapping into your adversity, but being yourself and doing what makes you happy. Because we've all been through so much adversity. I mean, whatever background you're from, if you're a woman, like I've talked about many, many times, your situation will inevitably be much harder than if you were born a boy. And that's the bottom line. So that's why it's helpful for me to talk more about some of these personal experiences that I've had, because there is learning there. And I feel like I've been from a really privileged position to work frontline with women for years and years and seeing the strength, the courage, the abilities that women have, even in the most difficult of circumstances, and understanding where that's coming from and what role I could play in that as well. Having said all of that, having worked in that field for a long time, I didn't know it all. I still burnt out. But all of those challenges, all of that adversity has really deepened my connection with other women who have been through either the same thing or something similar, because more of us are waking up to the level of shared experience that we have and how powerful it is. So that's kind of all I wanted to say about my experience with breast cancer for today. I hope it gives some background and context to where I'm coming from, the message I'm trying to get across. But really, it comes down to remembering all of the adversity that you have overcome to get here and to give yourself some credit for it. All right. See you again. Bye.